The grand lights of Thornfield Symphony Hall glowed like gold that night. Waiters rushed, photographers adjusted lenses, and the city's richest gathered for the annual gala. And in the corner, quietly mopping the marble floor, stood Ethan Rivera, a janitor in an olive green uniform, his reflection swallowed by the shine he polished every night. No one noticed him, they rarely did. To them, he was background noise, a man who existed so the hall could sparkle. But to his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, he was everything. Every morning, Ethan would walk her to school, lunch packed in her pink backpack. She'd wave with both hands, shouting, "Bye, Daddy! Play me something when I get home." He always smiled and nodded, though she never knew the truth. Her father hadn't touched a piano in years. Before life broke in, Ethan had been a concert pianist, a rising star. Until the accident, the night his wife, Clara, didn't make it home. Music became unbearable after that. Every note reminded him of her. He sold his piano to pay for medical bills, then took this job to raise Lily alone. 2 years passed. No more music, no more dreams, just work, rent, and bedtime stories. And tonight, like every night, Ethan stayed behind after hours to make sure the stage gleamed for the performers who'd play where he once belonged. He gently wiped dust from a Steinway grand piano, its black surface glowing beneath the chandelier. His reflection looked back, tired, older, but still holding something deep in his eyes. Then, a voice broke through the quiet. "Careful with that," said a man in a tuxedo. It was Richard Hale, the CEO of the Thornfield Foundation, powerful, proud, and known for his sharp tongue. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied softly. Richard barely looked at him. "Tonight's an important night. Don't scratch it." Ethan nodded. "Of course," but as Richard walked away, Ethan allowed his hand to linger over the keys. Just for a moment, a soft press, one single note, pure, haunting, alive. He froze, then quickly pulled his hand away. He whispered to himself, "Not tonight." Little did he know, tonight was the night everything would change. The gala began in full swing. Laughter echoed, crystal glasses clinked, cameras flashed. Ethan stayed in the background, invisible among tuxedos and gowns. Richard Hale, confident as ever, addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate art, excellence, and generosity." Applause filled the air. Ethan quietly continued wiping the edge of the stage, unseen, until a few guests noticed him. One of them, a young board member, pointed and chuckled. "Does he always clean during the gala?" Richard smirked. "He's efficient, always working." Then his eyes drifted toward the piano, and an idea sparked. He turned back to the crowd. "You know," he said, "I've always wondered if any of our staff have hidden talents." Laughter rippled through the room. He looked at Ethan. "What about you, my friend? Ever tried playing this thing?" Ethan froze mid-step. The hall went silent. "I used to play a little," he said quietly. "Oh, really?" Richard's voice dripped with amusement. "Well then, ladies and gentlemen, let's see if our janitor can give us a tune before the real musicians arrive." The crowd chuckled. Phones came out ready to record. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to say no, to walk away. But something in him, maybe pride, maybe the memory of Clara, wouldn't let him. He took a slow breath. "If you insist, sir." A few gasps. Richard laughed. "Confidence. I like that." He gestured toward the piano. "The stage is yours." Ethan walked up the stairs, every step echoing louder than the last. The bright lights blinded him. He sat on the bench, hands trembling. From the stage, he could see dozens of amused faces waiting for him to embarrass himself. One woman whispered, "This should be good." Someone else snickered, "He's probably going to play chopsticks." Ethan looked down at the keys. He hadn't touched a piano in years, but suddenly he remembered Clara's voice. "When you're lost, let the music find you." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then he began to play. The first note rang out, soft, trembling, like a secret being told for the first time. Then another. Every rise and fall told their story, love, loss, and everything in between. The crowd leaned in. Even Richard Hale's smile faded. As the music swelled, Ethan's memories came rushing back. The day Clara said yes, the night they brought Lily home, the hospital room where silence became forever. His tears fell quietly, unnoticed between the notes. The piano wept with him. Every chord carried something sacred, pain transformed into beauty. By the time he reached the final passage, the audience wasn't breathing. Phones were down, eyes were wet, then came the last note. It hung in the air, fragile, infinite, before fading into stillness. No one moved. For a full 5 seconds, silence ruled the room. Then a single pair of hands began to clap. Richard Hale, slow, deliberate, moved beyond words. The room erupted in applause, not polite but raw, human, thunderous. People stood. Cameras flashed again, but this time not for spectacle, for reverence. Ethan stood from the bench, trembling, unsure whether to bow or flee. Richard approached the stage, voice unsteady. "Mr. Rivera, that was extraordinary. Who taught you to play like that?" Ethan hesitated. "I studied at the conservatory once. Before my wife passed away." Gasps rippled through the crowd. He continued, "I left music to raise my daughter. This job helps me be home when she needs me." Richard's expression softened. He looked down, voice breaking. "I lost my wife years ago, too. I thought I'd buried the part of me that could still feel something like this." He paused, eyes glistening. "Thank you for reminding me," Ethan said quietly. "Music does that. It reminds us we're still alive." Later that night, after the crowd dispersed, Richard found Ethan backstage, packing his cleaning supplies. "Don't do that," Richard said. "You don't belong behind the broom anymore." Ethan smiled gently. "This job feeds my daughter. That's what matters." Richard shook his head. "No, what matters is she sees who her father really is." He took a breath. "I run the Thornfield Foundation. We fund artists, people who bring beauty into the world. I want to offer you a fellowship. Paid, flexible hours. You'll perform, record, and still be home for her." Ethan stared, disbelief in his eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Richard replied softly. "Say yes for her." 6 months later. A banner outside Thornfield read, "Ethan Rivera, live in concert." Backstage, Ethan adjusted his tie nervously. He wasn't wearing the janitor's uniform anymore. Just a simple black suit. In the front row sat Lily, hair tied with the same pink ribbon she always wore. When he stepped onto the stage, she stood on her chair and waved. "Play for Mommy, Daddy," she shouted. The audience chuckled warmly. Ethan smiled, a real, unburdened smile. He placed his hands on the keys, and this time when he played, there was no pain, only love. The melody rose and filled the hall. People wept openly. Even Richard, sitting near the front, wiped his eyes. The music carried something unspoken. Not tragedy, not loss, but a quiet promise that love never really leaves us. As the final note faded, Ethan looked toward Lily. She clapped with both hands, tears shining in her small eyes. When the crowd stood, Ethan bowed, but his gaze stayed on her. Everything he had lost had somehow come back through that music. After the concert, as people lined up to congratulate him, Richard handed him a framed photo. It was from that first night. Ethan in his olive green uniform seated at the piano under the chandelier's glow. Below the photo, a small plaque read, "The night the music found its way home." Ethan looked at it for a long moment. Then he said softly, "I thought my story ended that night." Richard smiled. "No, Ethan, that's when it began." That evening back home, Lily sat on his lap as he tucked her in. "Daddy," she whispered, "were you scared that night?" He nodded, terrified. "But you still played," he smiled, brushing her hair back. "Because sometimes being brave just means doing what love asks you to do." She snuggled closer. "Mommy would be proud," Ethan's voice caught. "Yeah, I think she was listening." The camera pans to the old photo on the nightstand. Ethan, the piano, the janitor's uniform folded neatly beside it. Some people play for fame, others play for love. But the rare ones, they play because the music inside them refuses to die. And when that music finally finds its way home, even the coldest hearts remember what it means to feel.